Hi, and welcome to an episode which I've been waiting to do for the longest time. So I've actually now got my rear windscreen. Well, I've got my second rear windscreen, the warranty repair or warranty replacement from the first one, which was a bit warped, which I'm pretty sure I've gone over in older videos, but I'll go over in this one just so everyone's on the same page. And then the big deal was not just getting the glass, but was getting a hinge, because the hinges I was given, I'll show you. This is the old Factory 5 standard hinge that came with the glass, because I had to go to Factory 5 for the glass. As you can imagine, that is for a Factory 5 where the glass meets up to the roll cage, which has got like the bracket fittings on it. Of course, this car doesn't have any of that, so I've had to knock myself up a hinge, and it's not as easy said as done. So obviously I had to wait for the glass to be in the right place. I put the glass on, leveled it up to be pretty accurate. I think there's still going to have to be some body work to get it to fill down the sides to get it to be where I'm really happy with it, but we'll take care of that later. The big deal for me was to get the top as level as I could, and then the bottom where the catch will be, oh, there we go, get that as level as possible. So yeah, that was the big one, so I've done that. But again, so if you look here, so this is, actually if I turn the camera around, this is the evolution of Hinge. Right, so like I said, that's the Factory 5 initial. So this is where it mounts onto the glass. As you can see, there's a single piece still bolted on through there, because I had to make sure, first off, that I couldn't use what I had. Ideally, I wanted to use all of it and then just make a bracket to fit my frame, but that was a no-go. So then second, I thought I would use at least this piece, just remake an extra bit. But having drawn, actually I've rubbed it off now, I drew a marker pen on here and laid out like a side profile of the bodywork, the roll cage, the windscreen, all the fittings, to try and get it to see if it'd work. And I just could not get the glass to pivot up without it binding here on the actual inside the frame that I've got. That's because it's different to the Factory 5. So that was a no-go, annoying as it was. So then I went to version 1, which is trying to make something out of cardboard just to get the right shape. And I put that over the picture which was drawn here on the metal to get that hinge to move. And even that just kept being an absolute pain. I went through loads of bits of cardboard. So what I finally did was, because it's all drawn out where the roll cage was and where the glass starts and where the obstruction was, I just drew the glass where I wanted it to be, approximately, then created a hinge that joined the two positions up, knocked it out of cardboard, and then when it's in the down position, that is the bit that then turned, well, there you go, Evolution 2. So I turned that into a nicer drawing. I drew round that flange, because obviously that's got the holes marked being these two holes in the glass are non-negotiable. So yeah, I drew that knowing fair well that would have to be 90-degree bent. Well, for one it'd be bent that way, and for the other one it'd be bent that way, so that when they're in the screen it mirrored and ideal. So then I was like, well, how do I turn this piece of nothingness into some steel? So I found a local company called Hydromar, actually, on the Isle of Wight, which does water jet cutting. It's water and aggregate, is what he told me, or abrasive, sorry. And they knocked me up just an shitty old template from my drawing. Basically, I turned up with this, and I took one of these pieces in just so they made sure these holes were right. I said, can you turn that into some steel, please? And he said, yeah, no worries. So he knocked up that in about a day, and I brought it back here. Just needed to make sure those two holes lined up perfectly. These are the fittings that go through and they hold the hinge to the glass, so they had to fit, and the two holes were lined up properly, and this end still fits. So what came with the Factory 5 is these two little sort of brass looking, they're not brass but little washers, bushes. So I don't know how the Factory 5 actually goes together, because I've got plastic bushes as well. I've never got instructions, I don't know, because I'm not building one. But what I liked the idea of is that these, in the original that came with it, these fit neatly into there, and when you've got one either side, they give a bit of space, which I figured was to allow the hinge to be able to move side to side. And then once you know where it's going to be, you can put little washers around this to shim it effectively. So that might be wrong, but that's what made sense to me. So I thought it was important to keep the same dimensions on that hole. So obviously when I came home with this, I just made sure that fitted nice. I won't be able to get it down now, that out with one hand. So yeah, when I proved that, that was cool. So now they've just knocked me up. Well, they've knocked me up 6, purely because I had to have a minimum fee for, I don't know, setting up the machinery. I can't remember exactly what he said now. But for the minimum fee, he could knock up 6 out of a piece of material. So we've done that. We've used exactly the same gauge material as what the original Factory 5 was. Obviously, the strength is in this way, not that way. The only thing I need to do is bend this 90 degrees, like that, which will be no big deal. It will go in the vise, and it will get persuaded to bend. But the good thing about having 6 is I can fuck that up 4 times, and I'll still be all right. So I'll do that shortly. Obviously, bending 1 in each direction, and then I've knocked up 4 of these a little while ago. It's just 5mm steel with a 49mm, well, it's actually a 50mm hole that gives that radius, and that is actually what fits the roll bar. So the plan is, once this is bent, bolted to the glass, like so under there, I'll then have this empty end terminating near my roll bar. If you imagine, that's your roll bar, that's kind of the roof that fouls, and the windscreen needs to sit here. That's the plate that goes through. Oh, sorry, not funny. And we've created a hinge which kind of does this. Okay, that's our plate there. It's a horrible drawing, but that's approximately what I had, but I actually had measurements on it. So with these fit to that bar, and I can put them wherever I want. So because there's no holes in them, once this is all bolted on and this sits here, hopefully it's more like here. Well, I know it's more like here and not that close. I will then clamp these either side of it, offer those right up to the roll cage, and that will give me literally the position of where I need to tack those onto, and where the center of that hole will be as well. So I'm kind of building the hinge from the given position back, because that's fixed and that's fixed. And yeah, the downside I'm aware of, I'm sure people will mention, is there isn't any room to really adjust it. Not like the Hinge and the Factory 5, which has got up and down, in and out. Basically, you can move it all around to get it fine-tuned, which is why I've actually shimmed up this with little biscuit cutter biscuits. So again, before anything gets tacked in place, I'll just double check I'm really happy with the position of the window. Once those are 90 degrees have been bent and they're bolted in and it looks okay, then it will be a bit of messing around with these. Get the holes approximated, drilled through, put the bolts through, have it all clamped up, so it'll be like that ish, with these fittings pushed in either side, that on there, and then the bolt made nice and tight through there. The joys of having these is that they can be really tight, but this will still pivot because it's the distance. I'm going to show you. Oh, one-handed, just annoying. The distance there is wider than obviously the 3mm steel we've used there. So I've got that shim ability. So yeah, well, that bolt will be nice and through. Bolt it back to the glass, and then that will literally just be up against the roll cage where it needs to be. I can pivot it, and then the tack. Once I've got a couple of tacks on both sides, we'll be lifting the glass and we'll be making sure it does what it needs to do, and there's no fouling and haven't made a major foobar. And then, yeah, once I'm happy with that, it will get fully welded. All the roll cage, everything's going to come back out again for powder coating and for all that stuff anyway. But it's it's just get the tacks on so it's not gonna shift around. So there we go. That's kind of where we're at with rear windscreening. Finally, it's taken so long. The other rear windscreen, which is right over the back here, it's been there for 2 and a bit years. Actually, I think I'll cut the video and I'll show you both of the windscreens laid on the floor over there, and we can actually show you the issue with the warranty issue. There was far too much of a bow down this side on the other screen. Right, I just thought I'd just jump to, so I've bent this one in the vise 90 degrees, offered it up, haven't put the rubber gaskets in, just offered it up with the fittings through the glass and the nuts on, and you can see now how it comes near trying to hold on to this, that turns up near the A-frame or the roll cage. So those plates there will go one either side of it, and I'll tack those on. Not a lot of room in here, but I will get a couple of tacks on once in place. There's a little bit of movement adjustment obviously in the holes in the glass are slightly bigger than the actual bolts that go through it, so nothing will be done until I'm absolutely happy where it is, completely vertical, parallel, they're both the same. But in general, yeah, that's pretty happy with that. So as that pivots, it well, the glass is going to be limited by how far up the gas rams allow it to go, but oh, my finger, certainly enough to be able to get in the boot. And you can see this angle makes it look like there's loads of gap from the glass. I think I've moved it when I've been messing around with this. And that side, there is a gap. That's a fair amount of fairing to be done, bodywork. But unfortunately, that's what you get when you're dealing with a shite fiberglass mould. Thanks, Dax. Okay, so fast forward a couple of days now, and I've made a bit of progress. You see, obviously, I've ripped out the seats to remove those because I didn't have any real access to get to the roll bar. Let me get in here. And first thing I need to do foremost was clear off a load of the paint so I could actually get and tack to it when I get to that stage. So yeah, seats out, and then if I show you with this side, so what I did, I've moved the windscreen into a position where I'm pretty happy with the height now and the positioning sort of left and right, forward and aft. And then I've offered up these brackets to where I roughly want them to go, or pretty accurate to where I want them to go, and I've drawn around the inside of the hull. Okay, so I did this one. So I took, after I drew around one of them, I took it away, drilled a hole through it. It was a 9.5mm hole, which is exactly the width of the shoulder bolt, which is actually in there. And then I clamped them together and drilled a hole through both at the same time, so they exactly mirrored the same. So I didn't want them being slightly out. And then what I've done, if you can see in there, is there we go, the two brass bushings which fit perfectly through the middle of the actual hinge bracket, I've been clamped tight with this. So this unit will slide across because that bush is the right thickness to. What I'll do once it's in the right place is I'll put washers either side of it, that'll keep it dead set. Anyway, there, then I cleared off just a little electric sander the muck off of the roll bar, so this is ready to be put into position and tacked. I'll just get a couple of tacks on it from where I can reach it now, and I'll do the same this side in a minute. I'm going to get in here, I'll knock this off, clear the pole up, and do the same again like I've mentioned. And then yeah, with a couple of tacks on there, I'll be nice and gentle with the rear screen. I want to lift it just to prove that the actual pivot's going to work, and to see how high it can go, where it binds first, when, and at what height, because obviously the gas rams, which will be here to up under here somewhere, will only allow for a certain height. So hopefully the gas rams will max out before anything binds. But yeah, I want to see as and where, and once I'm happy with that, then there'll be a full weld out of these either side, just on the outside, because we won't be able to get to the inside. And now, well, before I do that, sorry, I'll mark where I want these nice rounded and cut them down, so I have just a nice clean little bracket. And I think that's enough of an update. So until I've done both sides, I'm ready to actually open the glass. Yeah, I'll just keep plodding on. Right, it's a quick couple of minute update for you. So you can see, there we go. I've cut those two pieces, just rounded off the end, gave it the same radius that is on the inside. I think it's about 14mm from the centre of the hole. Did the same. Oh, let me show you that side. So yeah, they're on. I've still got that movement either side, which I'll take up with washers. So now the glass is. I'm happy with the glass. Sorry, I'm happy with the glass is. So I'm going to put a couple of tacks on. I get these magnetised, or use a magnet to hold them right in place. Put a couple of nice hot tacks either side, as far around as I can reach. I don't want to upset my roof lining. And then do that both sides.
and see if the thing can actually lift, and test it before I go too far and do anything I can't undo.
Right, I've just jumped forward a bit now from what I've just spoken to you about, hoping the rear glass was going to open. We're now 3 months ahead. It's 2022, whereas that was August, I believe. So glass is behind me. After I filmed that short piece, I tried to open the glass and I found that it was binding immediately on the top edge of the fiberglass. So as the glass was to come up, it wouldn't clear the fiberglass. The arc of the swing was fine, but it just wouldn't, because of the way that I had the hinge, it was already beyond its furthest point, so it was coming in as it came up, which I didn't know until, well, obviously until it was on there and you could physically try it. No matter what drawings I'd done, they were best guesses. So I didn't film any of that because I got pretty pissed off with it. I was massively fed up with this whole hassle having to create my own hinges. Is ridiculous. So jump forward to where we are now. I've got some hinges on. I have made some. I've got some laser cut off for my designs, and it does open. So I'll fill you in on the evolution of where we went. So we spin around. So first things first, this is where, like 2 minutes ago, we had this on and we were about to open the bonnet, open the boot. Again, another thing I did notice actually, that I went with the original factory 5. This is 1.5. Okay, this is the full factory 5 original hinge, which has got decent adjustment in the fact that you can slide in and around. I was using this piece the whole time because this is what was important to me because of the shape I needed to copy. That's the same thickness I went with, which I think I've already mentioned earlier in the video. But what I hadn't really paid attention to was this piece is actually quite a bit thicker. So obviously I got carried away with having a one-piece hinge, all the same thickness as what I believed the hinge was without really checking, my fault. So when I did mess around with the car to get it beyond the fiberglass, just to see what the swing angle was like or the radius of opening, and when this was up on 2 of these, the glass, there was too much wobble. So even if it had cleared, I'd have had to have bowl cut these. So I was on and on about making slight adjustments with these, but ultimately, as I'm sure a few of you have shouted at the camera already, there's no adjustment in that hinge at all. There wasn't. It was just going to work, and that was it. So had the glass been slightly out after bodywork or need to be adjusted, I wouldn't have been able to do that other than just lateral movements, which you saw with the brass bushings. I was going to put washers on. So it drew me straight back to thinking, well, this is what the factory have done. So I try and stick as close to that as possible. I mean, this one wasn't going to work for my my needs because of the orientation of the bar and the glass. So what I thought I would do was, this is going to stay on the glass because there's no reason this wouldn't work. I will try and make a new one of these, thicker material, as best as I could. So I came up with, there's cardboard iterations everywhere, but basically we only got a plasma cutter and just stepped out and I just cut some pieces out, which gave us what was going to be the right angle in order to get it to clear and give us a movement. So you can see it's a fair old change from the original, the whole position being different and the angle which we needed to clear. So this was, I think, the first one which kind of gave us pretty much what we needed. Certainly cleared the fiberglass. So from that there became, I think this was the other side of the thing, so obviously we had to make 2 to bolt them up to actually give it a test, because that's the pain in the arse with this thing. Best guesses, and well, I think this will work. It's not good enough. You actually have to make something, bolt it on, give it a lift and see if it's actually going to work. So from that, I mean, I've jumped back a step. I did make an aluminium one up first, ages ago, just a flimsy one to get some angles right. But yeah, anyway, that's irrelevant. So after we actually cut these out, I then did a couple of tests lifting the glass, saw where it went, saw bits I could improve on, and then transferred that information to a smoother drawing, which I took back the laser cutters, and we went with, I think it's 4mm steel on these ones. And again, it wasn't quite, we had to make some adjustments to these. When I looked at it carefully, I was like, oh, well, if I can't really adjust these because there's not enough meat in them and I don't want to cut into them. So we ended up making new ones of these as well. So what I'll do is show you that is the new, it's a bit rusty now because it's been sitting on my desk for a while. So that was a new version of this. If I put them over the top of each other, best you can see, there is a bit of difference in them. I mean, it's hard to show you exactly because I'm lining up the shank, but yeah, there is a bit of difference in them. Not a great deal. And they were frustratingly close, but again, so I had to. So then we ended up having two new pieces, so an entirely new hinge, which looks very scrapyard at the moment. Yeah, so I'll stop this video and I'll go back inside the car where I've got the two hinges on the glass and it does open, and I'll show you what we came to, but yeah, not very different to those. But I'd say that took me probably best part of a month of getting pretty pissed off of it, leaving it alone, playing with the exhaust, finishing that because I was running out at the same time, coming back to it, waiting for delays and people doing steel cutting for me, testing it, going back. Yeah, a bit of a financial drain and a bit of a stress. So yeah, I'll show you the inside and then I'll talk about the issues I had with the car when they did work. Right, hopefully we're not too echoey. Oh, it shouldn't be. So this is now inside, you can see inside the car. We had to move the pivot point of these as high as we could physically get it, because that was the key to getting the glass to go away as it lifted up rather than just coming in. So yeah, that was there's been a couple of iterations of this. Once these have been welded on enough that they will stay here while we're doing what we do, and then when the car gets stripped, this comes out, these will be cleaned up, fully welded around the tops as well, which we can't get to at the moment, and then obviously it'll be painted. Well, this whole thing will be powder coated. So yeah, that's the hinge there, and then that's that one. Again, with this one, it wasn't a real issue, but we had to be mindful that we had this cross member here in the way. As eagle eye ones, viewers already noticed, there's a bit of a divot here because the car's not square. I mean, it's a shitty DAX made copy, it's never going to be square. So yeah, having these on there, thinking great, we've made two of the right thing, put them on there, and then it's opened but bound one side. So I'll change orientation. Right, so looking at it from the back, as always, the plan was to keep the factory holes and the factory hardware fits into it, and it looked very factory with that piece that we've actually, well, no, we've redesigned it, but we've kept the same style. And you'll see here, I've had to cut quite large notches into that aluminium panel and none over there. That's because nothing on this fucking car is square. So, I mean, the point being, I can now lift this and it opens. It gives me clearance once it's open. Am I pushing it down again? And that is clearance. It's not all the clearance in the world, but it's clearance. So when bodywork's done, the car will just have to be shaped a bit cleaner, because I've done this quite roughly to get it to work. And you already see from here that right hand side is a bit higher. That's unfortunately the fact that the roll bar that they provided is as piss as you could get. So accepting what I've got is the best I can do now with this sort of stuff. You will notice as well, I've put on the gas struts that came with the glass. Luckily for me, I just bent the brackets there, stuck a couple of big rivets in, and this aluminium paneling, which I've made, well, one of the first things I ever made with the car actually, is rigid enough, and once it's actually been riveted in every single of these pre-drilled holes, when it's put together, way more than it needs to be as a way of rigidity. So one ram I tried, but that didn't have enough cuts to lift it up. So yeah, got two rams on it, both exactly the same, and that was a bit of a pain to make sure I got them in the right spot, but pretty happy. You have to actually push it, then you get to the bottom, it closes. Yeah, and then when you lift it up, the rams take the weight from about halfway and they take it to the top and it stops on the rams. So let's go back to it. So here, this was going to bind, and I knew there's nothing behind it, it's just empty space. So rather than make another hinge of a unique design for this side versus this side, I opted to trim, we say. It wasn't a fit of anger and fury or I hacked into it, it was a carefully planned trimming event, and that's the story I'm going to stick with. So, I mean, it's not perfectly adjusted, but it is on there, it operates. It now gives me the opportunity to know where it will close when it's down, and I will then have to work on the U-bolt, well, whatever you're going to call it, the actual bolt that it will clip into, because I've kept the factory fitting. So that is what I'm aiming to use, and this is a factory fitting. So we'll talk about that one in a second. The big issue that I was always going to have, having the second piece of glass, because the first one had basically a wave down the side of it, so there was no way it's even close to the bodywork. The bodywork's shite, because we've talked about this before, we won't go into it now. There is a massive gap down the side. I'm talking massive. This is not pushed as far down as it will go, and it will, once the U-bolt is in, then it will obviously actually be located into a final position. So that's next for me to do, so I can get it into a position where it's going to live. Fixed hinges, fixed bottom point, then I will have the gaps that I have, and that is simply going to be a case of bodywork. I will be consulting someone who's a lot smarter at that stuff than me, and when we've got a given shape from the glass, we know what shape we want the wings, so effectively we'll have to build up this edge and lose that down here as much as possible. We're taking it around here, same as the other side. It's not quite as bad this side, but again there is some body work to be done to lose it. And then once that's, because that's going to be quite a build up on this edge here, because I'll actually build up the inside so I don't get a huge lip. I just wanted to have enough of a lip. I've got test pieces of rubber stuck around it for depth, so I will fill the whole surrounding to the point where it looks uniform to the naked eye. Don't touch this with a tape measure or anything that's a bit too technical, but it will look good. The rubber will sit the right depth, the glass will sit in the surround. Believe me, there's been 1,000 different ideas bouncing around my head how to work this. I almost built a frame, GRP frame, that the glass fitted in perfectly, cut this entire body to bits, and then glassed in my own frame, knowing that then that would seat properly, and then just sorted the rest out. But yeah, these are ideas which are had and then thrown away. So yeah, the next challenge is that this back panel, which is where I obviously need to get into to have this mounted somehow, somewhere, is the first panel that I put in when I was doing the inside of the car, which means it would be the last panel to come out. So that would be everything in here, seats, all the center console, roll cage, which indirectly means this whole rear thing has to come out, because the A-frame roll cage lever is bolted underneath all that. This center storage bin comes out, then the side panels, and these side edges, because they're separate, and then the back piece can come out. So the very fact that the roll cage has to come out means that I wouldn't then be able to, well, the glass would have to come off clearly. I wouldn't be able to just test up and down to see where it needed to be with measurements. So pretty much fucked on that point of how I'm gonna fit that, until I decided that why don't I just cut a dirty grey hole neatly, but in the fiberglass, go in the back of the car, go in the back door, because that gets me right inside here, no hassle, there's nothing else in there. I can then work with this all as it's going to be. Obviously I'll make some quite intelligent best guesses of where it's going to be first, and I can get through in the inside. I can make whatever backing plates I need to. I can GRP up inside to form a backing plate. I can put thicker plates on this, however I'm going to do it. But I've got clear access, and I'll probably cut something that's about almost a square foot, cut it out, knowing that GRP's piece of piss to repair, and the whole car is going to be in bodywork for quite some time before it gets anywhere. So it seems like the best idea. So we'll mark something up, cut it out nice and neatly with the thinnest blade I can, and obviously keep the piece to go straight back in because of the shape. Well, I mean, why wouldn't you? Yeah, and also while I'm in there, I will be cutting some small drain holes and putting a little barb fitting underneath both corners, and having some thin tube or pipe that will drain out from the bottom of the car, because there is no drainage on this whole back screen. So as and when it will rain on me, it's England, it won't just flood up and then fill the boot. It will actually drain out to a certain degree. I mean, I make the holes as big as is feasible, It's not really a car that's designed to sit in a rainstorm, but I need to do something to make sure they don't end up having a constant issue with water going in the boot. I have no idea what the factory 5s have got in the way of drainage to overcome that issue. So yeah, it's just because this inner corner is lower than this corner. So if water does go, well, when water comes off the screen and goes into the gap, before it fills up and goes over there, it would fill up and come in here. And obviously this would then always be full of water. So just trying to think ahead a little bit for problems that I can foresee. Right, I think I'm going to stop this video here. It's about half an hour long, I think, by this point. So thanks for watching, and I'll start another one about how to get the catch, the receiver, or whatever you're going to call it, into the back panel here. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be cutting in the back of the car. But you start another video on the process there, because no doubt that's going to be fraught with issues. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you again.